This is episode 59 of the Gauntlet podcast. My name is Jason.
I'm Lowell.
And I'm Rich.
Hey, Lowell, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Listeners, Steve, our normal co-host, is out this week because he is moving to Austin, beautiful Austin, Texas, and so Lowell is filling in for us. You will know Lowell from his blog, his excellent gaming blog, Age of Ravens, as well as the Play on Target podcast. We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
And so let's see. Rich.
Yes, sir.
I continue to be intrigued by how much mileage you get out of doing weird things to Monsterhearts. So you have this play-by-post.
I do.
That's not just play-by-post, but it's GM-less as well. What is this about?
Jennifer K., who's a buddy of mine that we've been playing some play-by-post back and forth, the both of us were in a Monsterhearts game that was set in Tokyo. The GM, Scott, he lives in San Francisco. He knows a great deal about Japan. He's been several times. His wife's Japanese, so he knows what the heck he's talking about. And he started off the game, but some things happened. He just wasn't able to continue the game. And Jen and I were complaining, right? Because we loved this game. We loved our characters, even though it was only like one session in play-by-post, which is one session's about a month.
Right, yeah.
And rather than trying to recruit a GM, we just said, well, let's just try to keep it going. So we took it to Google Docs, and we've been running it GM-less with just 2 PCs. We started off with each of us having a front that would be under our control.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, that was the initial setup. And we found that that was interesting, but there are other aspects of this as we've played that we've had to try to blend into the game. So the fronts are setting specific. There is a front that has to do with the supernatural. There's a front that has to do with high school. And there are moves within each of those fronts. So they're pretty well defined. I'll be honest, Jen did most of the heavy lifting because she's way good at this stuff. As we have evolved the play, I've actually found that it is similar to what I saw the goal of Storium being. Storium to me was not that interesting because it felt like it was more of a writer's room and there were less mechanics that drove the fiction. And so that was less appealing to me as Storium.
Got it. Okay.
But when you step into a GM-less role in a play-by-post, I'm finding, at least in our play of this, that there's a little bit more of a loose layer of GM there that's constantly on.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we'll have scenes, and our characters will be present. Sometimes they're focal to one PC or another PC, but often they overlap. I found it very fascinating to sit in and write as a player, but always keeping an eye towards having to be the arbiter, having to be the master of ceremonies to keep those mechanics in mind. Now, when you have a game, a Powered by the Apocalypse game, I find that it's pretty successful because to do it, you do it.
Right. Yeah,
it's pretty obvious when a move happens. So that part is easy. It's just the failures and the hard moves. Often, if it's my character, I'll step out of that because I don't want to violate that Sega principle.
Right. Yeah.
Authoring your own challenge is not that fun. So if my character is generating a move, the hard move, the failure, the hard move goes to Jen and vice versa. And sometimes we'll check in like, I'm feeling like it goes here. Is that violating anything that you had in mind? So there's a little bit of permission there. But we've gotten a good vibe, and so those permissions are easier and easier. We kind of have a vibe for how things are going. The other part of this game that I found really fascinating of late is that the setup for Sato Ai, which is Jen's character, is that she is creating this crazy dream machine type thing. She's almost like a savvy head from Apocalypse World. Mm. And she's creating this dream machine, and the backstory is that it was originally created by her brother, but at some point less than a year ago, he committed suicide.
Oh, okay.
And so that was a pretty heavy background element.
Yeah, yeah.
And it remained within the background during the play that we first started off when Scott was running the game. And it has been in the background during the initial 10 or so scenes that we had setting up. But then I introduced a plot where there was this divide between herself, her mother, and her father. They're all the 3 survivors, right? And I don't even know if this feels like Monster Hearts, but the plot up front kind of bubbled up with the idea of let's redecorate his room.
Oh, wow.
Because it's just sat unused.
Yeah.
Nice.
This sounds like someone's LARP. I'm just going to throw that out there. This sounds like someone's sad, depressing-ass Nordic LARP. I'm just going to throw that out there.
I think this is like 8 out of 5 tiers on the 1 to 5 tier ratio.
I think it is, yeah.
But it's been really interesting because it's brought it to the fore. It's forcing people to have conversations. There have been some really interesting, emotional moments between the way that the mother is dealing with the grief, the way the father is avoiding the grief, the way Sato Ai is just... She is constantly driving herself forward to kind of complete her brother's work, and bring all that to the fore has made for some really interesting drama, and it's triggered a number of moves that have taken us in unexpected directions, and that's been really fun and engaging for me lately.
That's cool. Yeah, I think that's great. It seems like Powered by the Apocalypse games, there's a lot of space there for them to pop, with a little bit of rejiggering, for them to exist in a GM-less space because the moves do so much work, right? Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I do think that the idea of handing the GM moves off in a cycle, that hadn't occurred to me that you could do that. Certainly, it allows them to give you the moves that they're imagining, but they've also can tailor it to what they would like to have set up in the scene. So I think that's very nice.
How do you think it compares to, like, say, Dream Askew? Because Dream Askew is a GM-less PBTA, right?
It is. I think that Dream Askew was the initial framework that we started from. Yeah. And Jen's really comfortable with Dream Askew, so I think that she was able to delve in. I found that the economy and the actual mechanics of Dream Askew are a little bit more opaque for me.
I have a hard time with
it,
too.
Dice.
Yeah, I have a hard time with it also. But I've only played it once. I'd like to give it another shot at some point. But yeah, I'm kind of with you on that.
But that was the basic thing, is I just want to roll some dice, and we already had the stats for the guys, so why reimagine them as Dream Askew characters?
Cool. I can't wait till we add this to the bingo card. Rich does some weird shit with Monster Hearts. Bingo. Awesome. That's great. Lowell, I'm really interested to hear about your Middle-earth homebrew game. Just the genesis of it. What's it all about?
Well, it kind of came about because we've been playing my Sunday group together for now 20 years. I think.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah, continuously bi-weekly for 20 years through a bunch of different campaigns. And a couple of times I've put out lists of campaigns for people, put out pitches, and each time I've put Middle-earth in there because one of the players really loves Middle-earth. And each time it's gotten vetoed by some of the other players. But we finally came around where people were interested in it. So I started to work on it. And I read through the One Ring, which is really rules heavy. A lot more rules heavy. It's got some very interesting stuff in it. The travel rules are a cool way to evoke something very particular from Tolkien, but way outside of what I want to do. And we've been playing with our homebrew, which is card-based, drawing from Fate. So I just worked on adapting it over to that. But the thing I found that has been sort of the toughest thing, and the thing I've been really working hard on, is making it feel like a Tolkien game, making it feel like we're in Middle-earth.
Yeah. So you have mechanics for walking?
No, but it's God, I hate to say tone policing, but there's a little bit of that. Like when we describe characters, we focus on their heroic elements.
Right,
Ideas about sexualization, those are kind of off the table.
Right.
And all of those kinds of edgy things aren't present. And we've stopped to have some conversation about, okay, these are Tolkien orcs. We're going to approach them in the way that we've seen in the movies and things like that.
Right.
But I want to make clear that I recognize that that's problematic, but we're going to stick with the genre.
Right.
And the other thing is I don't know Tolkien that well, but a couple of my players really do. Actually, a couple of players and my niece who's playing know it quite well. So I don't think they realize how ignorant I am So they'll say something, and I'll say, "Oh yeah, absolutely like this," with and that's related to Gladriel and blah 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 blah.
Right. Yep.
That's been interesting, and they have stuck to their tone. They have stuck to their character ideals of about what it means to be an elf or what it means to be a dwarf. There's a lot less of the kind of burn-off jokes that you get in our conventional fantasy games.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. That's got to feel good.
It does, and it sort of terrifies me because I kind of don't know how I'm keeping it on the balance beam of that, and I'm afraid I'm going to go too far one way or the other at some point. So I just keep pedaling as fast as I can here.
Here's my question. I have never actually played any of the various Tolkien role-playing games that have come out over the years, right? I've never played any of them. So one thing I've always wondered is, like, what story do you tell? Do you tell the story of the War of the Ring? Do you tell the story of The Hobbit, or like the years just after the War of the Ring? Like, how do you make that decision, and what do players tend to want? That's always the mystery to me.
I actually gave them a choice between two frameworks. The first framework is how the One Ring handles it, which is essentially the period between The Hobbit and the War of the Ring, which they've got that whole Darkening of Mirkwood long generational campaign that covers that, and was interesting to me, but at the same time, you know that everyone's going to go into the toilet at the end of that. So,
right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that Middle-earth role-playing, the old Rollmaster version, did is they set it a couple thousand years in the past, in 1640. That's as I put it to the group, time moves very slowly in Middle-earth, so even though it's 2,000 years in the past, not all that much has changed. So we're actually taking place before some of the kingdoms have fallen to the Witch King, but others haven't. And essentially there's the kingdom of Arthedain, which is where the Rangers come from eventually in the north. And the players all know that eventually it falls. But we're dealing with that period where things are kind of starting to decline, but maybe it could get turned around and maybe there could be some hope. That's the period we're working in. Because one of the other things it allows me to do is that's all the sort of the stomping grounds of the Hobbit and all those places where they go to Weathertop and they go to Amon-Sol and all around there. So we're able to see some of those places. At the same time, there are ruins there that they can go and see, like one of the capital cities that fell to the Witch King, and they can go in there and see, okay, here's glory that has fallen. That's what it looks like to you guys in this generation.
I think if I were going to run a Tolkien-based game, I would want to do something really... I'd want to explore like a really obscure corner of the world that's maybe not even defined, like the city of Angmar. We know vaguely what it is. We know its sort of like origin, but we don't know anything what it's like to be in the city of Angmar, right? Or the Southrons or something, you know, like I would be really tempted to do that. I've been having a lot of similar thoughts about A Song of Ice and Fire because I'm really caught up in that right now. I am whenever the show is on, and or when one of the books comes out every 10 years or whatever. I'm really caught up in it, and I think, oh man, I want to run A Song of Ice and Fire, but I have no idea where to start a story in a role playing game for that because it's such an established mythology, an established story. It's like, where do you even begin? So. Yeah, I don't want it to be a tour, like, oh, we're in Winterfell and now we're going to go down to, that's the struggle I'm having with, like, where would I even begin a game like that?
And certainly that was my very first thought, but I realized that you're already putting them in such an odd world and situation that they have to get acclimated to, making them having to then acclimate repeatedly every week to new places.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree. There's some beautiful stuff from the old Middle-earth RPG, the MERP stuff, covering vaguely the South and Harad and the Southern lands. That's kind of neat things that could be good inspiration. Of course, there's the far East where the other two...
The Blue Wizards win.
Yeah.
Awesome. Tolkien pop quiz. Do you know who Queen Beruthiel is?
No.
Okay.
No idea.
I only know because someone Tolkien pop quizzed me like 20 years ago, and I haven't never forgot the answer. Queen Beruthiel was the queen of, I don't remember what, of some human city. This is ancient Silmarillion days. And she had these 9 cats, and she would send these 9 cats out into the world to spy on her enemies.
Wow.
And in fact, in one of the Lord of the Rings movies, Aragorn makes a little like aside comment about someone being as perceptive as Queen Beruthiel's cats. And anyway, stupid tidbit.
Wow.
I will say one of the things I do, because there is so much to Tolkien. You know, I've got 7 of Christopher Tolkien's rewritings and there's all this stuff.
Yeah.
Is often I will say something, oh, well, this is blah, 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 and I have my various list of names, and I will modify that so it sounds Tolkien-y, and I act as if I've taken it from Tolkien, because they're not going to go check it.
That's good. That's good. I love it. That's why names are important, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I harp on names. That's a great reason to like get your names right, because you want it to sound convincing. Awesome. Is there anything else you want to say about it, Lowell?
No.
All right, cool. I want to talk about Battlestar World. So I got a chance to play a very early playtest version of Andrew Medeiros' Battlestar World. Battlestar World is a Powered by the Apocalypse game that is set in the universe of the new TV show, the new revival of Battlestar Galactica, the 2004 revival. It was fun. It's clearly a very early playtest. It has lots of stuff that has to be still has to be accounted for, and there's not even a text really. It was just playbooks and move sheets, and so I had to kind of fill in some of the gaps, a little bit in terms of like how to play, which I expected. That was not anything surprising, but it was good. What we did, there were a few things that I really enjoyed about it. We actually decided to tell like an alternate universe version of the basic Battlestar Galactica story, right? Humans on the run from Cylons, the last remaining humans, of the 12 colonies, on the run from Cylons. We did that story, but with a completely different crew, right? Like totally different, characters. The president was different. The commander was different. Everything was just different. It was almost like one of the, in the new show, they hint that this story has been repeated over and over again throughout history, right? Like it's destined to repeat itself over and over again. And so we kind of like played it that way. It's like, oh, this is one of those like instances, of when that story is being told again, when we're repeating history for the, 1000th time or whatever. So the setup of the game gives you the freedom to tell the story in that way. And in fact, I think that's the intention. I don't think Drew intends for you to play Starbuck and Commander Adama, right? I guess you could, but I don't think that was his intention. I also really liked the emphasis on life on the Galactica, like between the crew members. So if you recall from the TV show, those of you who've seen it, a big emphasis on that show is sort of dealing with the stress of running from the Cylons, the aftermath of battles with the Cylons, fights between crew members, but also crew members blowing off steam, hanging out in the mess hall, like that kind of thing, right?
Right.
This game really emphasizes that aspect of the story. The moves do that. They're moves that are very similar to his in-development game, The Watch. The Watch has very similar sort of angle to its story. So it has moves like provoke a reaction. Like it's a move specifically about saying something to get under someone's skin to see if they'll throw a punch at you, right? Or they'll, get angry at you for some reason. Or blow off steam, which is how your character blows off steam. I really, really enjoyed that aspect of the game, and I think that's going to be where a lot of the really good dramas come in from. There's still a ways to go on it, but I'm pretty excited about some of the things that he's developing for this game. I think it's going to be maybe not like totally unique as far as PBTA goes, but definitely a very, very interesting angle on the PBTA formula. So I'm excited to see where he goes with what he's calling battle moves. They're like specific moves that are meant to arbitrate how you do the space battles with Cylons. It's a little similar to Night Witches, like the Night Cycle in Night Witches.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, it's right. It's really cool. The mix of playbooks is interesting. It'll be very interesting to see like how the rules or how the text accounts for I'm playing the president and you're playing the gunnery chief, right? Or you're playing the technician. Like, how do we tell the story of those two characters who are in such different places, in the Galactica, caravan or fleet, right? I'm interested to see how that goes. And then the really, really awesome thing when this game is done, when he's got it nailed down for good, is the idea of the characters having a trust currency between each other, and the character and a character possibly becoming a Cylon at some point, right? Or like revealing themselves to be a Cylon. Right now, the trust mechanic is a little sketchy. He's making some changes to it, and some changes based off our feedback, which is great. But he kind of envisions it being something like the trust mechanic in the Mountain Witch, where it's like secret. And so you have like a secret trust currency that you can use to do different things in the game. I'm excited to see where some of those aspects of the game are going to go. For a really, really quick playtest draft, it's a really solid, fun, enjoyable experience. I'm very excited to see what he does with it. Obviously, he can't like publish it for sale, right? Unless he goes and gets the license somehow to Battlestar Galactica. But
good luck.
I suspect he'll do kind of like he did with the Mouse Guard one, which is he just basically filed the serial numbers off and released it as the Woodlands.
I was just going to ask, now the playbooks are beyond just the crew members. There are people from sort of the civilian side, or is it purely the crew members?
It's both. And that was one of the conversations we had right in the beginning, because you can choose to be a politician. You can choose to be an aide to a politician. You can choose to be like a sort of an idealistic rabble rouser within the fleet, a non-military sort of like ideologue. Or you can choose to be the flight commander, the CAG, or a fighter pilot, right? Or a technician. And so we were thinking the best route is to probably just say we're only going to choose from X, Y, and Z playbooks so that we can tell this type of story. And in fact, that's what we did. We told a story that was very focused on basically the flight deck. It was like a flight deck story. But I'm not sure what his intentions are as far as that goes, because like I said, there's no text yet. It's just playbooks and moves. I'm not sure like what he will eventually advise as far as that goes, because we were having a hard time seeing how I could be the president of the fleet or the president of the colonies, right? And you can be a guy who fixes fighter jets or fighter pilot, fighter planes. Like, how is that, what is our reason to exist together, right? So it could be just like any other Powered by the Apocalypse game where you just make conscious decisions as the MC. We're going to have this playbook and this playbook and this playbook, and that's what we're going to do.
I would be remiss if I did not mention that about 4 years ago, Sean Nittner released Apocalypse Galactica.
Oh.
It's a reskin. There's not a whole lot of rules hacks there. He created playbooks. He has a neat little set of love letters and an introduction that I'll be happy to share with you. But I wonder how those two would incorporate, or if that could help kind of jumpstart some of this new Battlestar world stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't even know. Drew, he may or may not be aware of that. I don't know.
And I'll be curious because, of course, the other version that's been done of it is in the Cortex system.
Yep.
Which builds on relationship maps for dice generation. So I haven't looked at that, but I assume it's like Smallville in that. But I haven't really looked through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that was Cortex Plus, was it? I think that was actual original Cortex, if I remember correctly.
I can't remember.
I'm not super familiar with Cortex. I've only ever played Marvel Heroic, and it wasn't my jam. So it was okay. It just wasn't really my thing.
Same.
Awesome. I don't have anything else to say about Battlestar World except to say that he's got a lot of really cool ideas, and I think especially if he can get that trust mechanic to come together, it'll be something really special as far as PBTA goes. So I think it'd be pretty cool.
I think it would be interesting to not only have a trust mechanic, but perhaps to have something like the board game where you're just told that you are the Cylon.
What?
That is a thing that happens. Yeah. Dan, oh my God, Dan hates that board game so much. There are few things in the world that gets Dan's blood up more than like saying, "Let's play Battlestar Galactica, the board game." He will.
Wow.
He immediately launched into a rant about how much he hates it.
I think we should play the Battlestar Galactica board game and talk about Game of Thrones.
We should do an AP of the Battlestar Galactica board
game. New show on the Gauntlet Network.
You do like a little off screen. Listeners, I have been selected as the Cylon.
Oh, dude, that sounds good.
No, it does not. I know you guys wanted to further discuss Blue Rose, your Blue Rose Dungeon World thing that we set up last week. Rich, you want to lead off on that?
I do. Blue Rose, again, the green running romance fantasy setting that we've kind of hacked into Dungeon World. One of the players we knew ahead of time would not be able to make it, although he was at a baseball game and bragging about it on Hangout chat while we were about the game. Thanks a lot, Scott. Not jealous at all.
Oh, that was a jealousy thing. I didn't pick up on that at all.
Super jealous. No, I'm a huge baseball fan, so it was great. He posted pictures.
I was like, poor Scott.
Poor Scott. No. And what was funny is I knew this going into the weekend. Lowell posted on Google Plus, my game just got canceled. And I said, hey, I've got a kind of prequel to our actual campaign launching off thing that I'm going to do. You want to sit in on a one shot?
I was like, yes, please, now.
And so he created his character leading into the game. We already had bonds for everybody else, but I've learned the Gauntlet way.
It's not that hard.
We folded in a few bonds and got things started pretty quickly. It isn't. It's just, you have to be flexible to it, right? And the cool thing was that there are enough bonds to where you can have some stuff left over.
Yeah,
right?
That's true. Yeah.
The challenge here was I wanted to kick off the game, but I did not want to do so much world building that Scott, baseball game Scott, would come in and see this kind of already done world. I really feel like that's a big, exciting part of Apocalypse World games, and I anticipate it making this thing our own of Blue Rose is also going to be important for Scott. But I still wanted to establish some things about the world. I still wanted to play, right? I pitched this thing because I wanted to play it. So I had this challenge of how do we... It's an ongoing theme for this episode, if you think about it. How do we play with canon? Right? How do we still make things interesting with these certain constraints of the setting that we have decided to play in? And so my challenge was, what am I going to do as a one-shot? Because I knew Lowell, unfortunately, I couldn't get him to come back. He's got this other game or whatever.
Sorry.
So I knew he was a one-shot. I wanted to give him a fulfilling experience. I also wanted to have something that took place at a slightly different time set than when Scott's PC would be introduced. It's interesting. Dungeon World, I don't have to plan as much as most of the classic, more conventional games. We ran for 3 hours, and I had one encounter pretty much planned with some stuff leading up to that encounter.
It's that easy. It really is. Yeah.
I spent more time freaking out about not having anything that I could easily jump to than actually the planning part where I said, okay, well, I can definitely do this, but there still needs to be more.
Whenever I'm having a Dungeon World panic moment, I go into this weird Zen space where I remember what it was like to be in the 8th grade playing 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and just some shit magically pops out of my mouth from the archive. Like, it's a beautiful thing.
That's great. Lowell, talk to me. What did you think about the game? What were your thoughts as you were playing?
Well, it was interesting because that's only the second time that I've played Dungeon World. The first time it was with a big group, and it was done as a one-shot, and everything was very much built just on the bonds, and we ran from there. So it was neat to see Dungeon World functioning within a kind of established setting, because I wasn't sure how that was going to work. But it was fun, and certainly everybody had a sense of the world from their previous character builds, and they were really, really good about bringing me in on that with their bonds. That was a pleasure, and I'm impressed at how well that worked at the table, because I was a little nervous about how I was going to be and so on.
I wasn't. I know this group, they're really, really solid and giving, and I'm super happy that you got a chance to experience gaming with these guys, because I think this is the first time you'd actually met all of them, right? Everybody but Misha.
Right. And they were both quite good. Yeah.
You know, that geek social fallacy of like all my friends should be friends of my other friends?
Yeah.
This was that one moment when it worked out.
It is a thing, I've been told. Well, hey, Lowell, I'm curious. You said it was your second time playing Dungeon World. What do you think of Dungeon World so far? Because that's a big storyline in the Gauntlet, right? So I'm just curious, like, what you think of it.
Yeah, I heard that some people played Dungeon World.
A few
on the Gauntlet. Yeah. Before, when I played it, I kind of enjoyed it, and I was like, okay, so obviously Dungeon World is just kind of a pickup game thing.
Can be.
That was my sort of impression. I had a hard time picturing how it would go long term. I have a much better picture of it now, having seen Rich kind of shape to it. And it actually made me go back and look at some of the Dungeon World products that I bought, like Class Warfare and the set of things from like Last Age of Anglekite. And
that's really good. I haven't used it yet, but man, that's a good one. That Last Days of Anglekite.
Yeah, the one I really wanted to look at again is that there's the Green Law of Varkeith, which is a Planescape homage. And when I had first looked at it, I was like, I'm not sure this Dungeon World is the right fit for this. But going back and re-looking at it, I was like, okay, yeah, I can see how you could do it. I'll give you an example. I ran 13th Age for quite a long time, and I picked up the Mega Dungeon, Eyes of the Stone Thief for it. Huge volume. Very cool. Lots of interesting stuff. But I don't think I could run that in 13th Age. It's a lot of encounters, a lot of numbers, a lot of days, a lot of dungeoning. And I was like, I bet I could do that with Dungeon World and really abstract and still have super fun, evocative moments.
Yeah.
I was very pleased with it.
That abstraction in Dungeon World is so powerful. People often ask me how I go about converting OSR modules for Dungeon World, which is something I do. I do a lot of it. And it's all about abstraction, right? I mean, it's all about reading through the module, finding like the 3 or 4 really big ticket items in that module, like the really big themes or motifs or encounters that the module wants you to have, and then kind of summarizing all the rest, right? Like turn those things into your fronts and then just summarize a lot of the other stuff, make a handful of custom moves that give you the flavor of the dungeon, and you're good to go. Like it works really, really well.
It's kind of like making the movie version of a book series, right?
Yeah.
That's actually a great analogy, Rich. That's really, really solid analogy. I never thought of it that way, but you're right.
Yeah, because that's very tough. I mean, if you look at the script for, say, Order of the Phoenix from Harry Potter, I actually think that's not a great movie, but it's a brilliant script for what it cuts the down to in that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's a terrific analogy. This idea of that's really good. I never thought of it that way. Cool, awesome. Do you think you have more Dungeon World in your future?
I do think so, because it seems to me, I'm like, okay, this will be easy if Sherry or my niece want to play some fantasy. Easy enough to throw that onto the table very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah, you can do a lot with custom moves too. Custom moves can fill in those gaps, right? Like whatever you think Dungeon World might be missing in terms of like your setting you're trying to do, a custom move like in the right place really, really does the job well. So,
little preview, not exactly Dungeon World related, but there will be a +1 forward episode coming before too long where we're really going to talk about custom moves and how you can use that to evoke setting with rules. It's really cool.
While we're plugging our respective mutual podcasts, I'm currently running a custom move contest on Discern Realities, which we've mentioned before. So listeners
are?
go get it. Awesome.
How do you make a custom move? Is there something special about this custom move that you need to create?
It just has to be location-based. That's it. All right, let's see. Do you guys have anything else you want to say about this Blue Rose?
I really like Blue Rose, and I think Rich did a nice job of pulling out some of the little detail bits that make it feel like romantic fantasy, like hand-waving some of the guard stuff, making that into kind of a more of a playful scene, the description of the queen and what's going on with that, and everything kind of played with that, I would say, sort of that soft focus that I kind of picture with the romantic fantasy of the game.
Are you recording those, Rich?
I am not publicly recording it. I record it for my own notes.
I'd be curious to see it just to see how you do some of those things, because I've never actually I've run lots of Dungeon World, but I've never run Dungeon World in that way. Like I've never run courtly intrigue or romance. Like that's never been, those aren't themes I've ever done. So I'd be curious to see how it goes.
And that was actually one of the things, is I think people bought into that at the beginning because they built their bonds a lot on that.
Right,
they were built on ideas of companionship and love and affection that struck me.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
And of course the bear. There's a giant bear in it that everyone loves.
The bear.
Yes.
Cinema's the best.
Awesome. I got a chance to finally play Sagas of the Icelanders by Gregor Vuga. I had never played it. It's one of the older Powered by the Apocalypse games, one of the older hacks. I don't have a lot to say about it quite yet. We have one more session on the calendar, and I'd kind of like to hold off until we finish that session up. I'm really enjoying it so far, though. I love the game's emphasis on gender roles. I think that's a really interesting angle in the game. And the fact that these characters have, if you're a male character, you're expected to do certain things. And if you're a female character, you have access to certain moves. I should say Sagas of the Icelanders is about this 100-year period in history when the Vikings were settling Iceland. It was an unsettled land at that point, and for various reasons, these Norse people came to Iceland to settle it. And the game is about, it principally focuses on these farmsteads and the people who live on these farmsteads and some of the characters that they kind of interact with in the setting. That your main focus is like a farmstead and the people who run it, and then you might have other characters like the Seidkona, who's kind of a witch or a seer. You have like the Gori, who is a priest or an arbiter. You might have like a wanderer who's not on a farmstead but who's just wandering through, that kind of thing. Yeah, I really liked the way the game handles gender roles. I thought that was really, really interesting. And the fact that it has a bearing on the moves, which was really cool. It led to this really interesting style of play because we had a good mix of male and female characters. It led to this very, very personal and intimate style of play that I'm not really accustomed to in some PBTA games. I mean, we have like personal and intimate moments in PBTA games all the time, sex moves, right?
Right.
This was more about like, it felt a lot more like human or immediate in some way. And here's what I mean. The main thrust of our drama was these two farmsteads, these neighboring farmsteads, husbands and wives who know each other and who settled together, and they're friends, social friends. And they have this guy who wanders into the village, this is our story, who tells them about this whale that beached itself, which would be a great treasure, right, for whoever can get it. And this wanderer and his news of this whale, it unleashes this pent-up tension that existed like between these couples and their relationship. And that was what the story was about. It was about like the women characters, challenging the manhood of the male characters. It was about the male characters feeling like they weren't being properly respected by the women. It was about the wanderer driving wedges between them. Like, it was really, really tight and intimate and personal. And it was good. It was really good. I'm really happy with it so far. We've got one more session. I want to see how it plays out. But yeah, good stuff so far. Oh, and just as a bonus, we got to play with Alexandra Santowska, who wrote The Beast, the little card game,
neat.
The Beast.
Very cool.
Yeah. So that was cool. And so we got one more session. Can't wait to see how it goes. But so far, it's good. Yeah, good stuff.
Are you emceeing that one?
I am.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Do you have the sense that the game itself is pushing towards that kind of emergent story, or is it just that it supports what has happened?
I don't know the answer to that question, Lowell. The moves, particularly the male and female moves, are very much about honor on the male side and about women stepping over like their prescribed bounds. And so I think that those moves in particular push the story in a certain way. The setting, to some degree, makes it kind of a tight story because it's a real gritty medieval setting, right? And we're not talking about a very large geographical space by necessity, right? These are characters who by necessity live fairly close to each other. There are no villages, there are no cities. It's just like families on farmsteads, right? So I think that combination probably drives the play that way. But having said that, it could just be the story we were feeling like having. So I don't know what the answer is, but I feel it might be a mix.
Okay.
Well, why don't we close out this part of the show? I'd like to just hear a little bit more about Crowsmantle, since we have you on, Lowell. In particular, what was your thinking about like putting that together? Rich set it up last week, but I'd like to just get your thoughts on why you decided to go for this like core PBTA experience. Like, what were you trying to go with, like, accomplish there?
So my base reason is that some of the players really don't dig fate.
Guilty as charged.
If I'm going to be honest, they some of them don't dig fate. They don't like the way the aspects work and things like that. But one of the things I appreciate about Fate and say Fate Accelerated is it's very transparent for me. Mm-hmm. I can run. I don't need to look at books. I know how things work. So I wanted to kind of try to get that experience at the table and break it down to essentially 4 moves that we could fall back to, but also encourage players to give them picks so that they can build custom moves for themselves or other things and make that very free form. I think the 4 moves thing works pretty well because we just kind of roll along.
Yeah,
we're just playing, we're narrating, we're bouncing back and forth. I think that asking players to do the custom moves and build those into their characters may be a little less successful.
Mm-hmm.
I think players have gone for stat picks and obvious items, and only one of the players has gone, okay, I'm going to build a new move for myself based on what kind of magic my character does.
Yeah.
Rich described it when we were first talking about it as it seems like you're putting a lot of the quote-unquote heavy lifting in the hands of the players. And I think that's true. And if I were going to go back and rework it, I would try to provide some easier models for that. A suggested list that wouldn't be overwhelming, and some models for how to do it in the same way that Fate Accelerated provides a couple of key models for building the stunts in that system.
There are games that kind of do this, not as you've described it, but they have something similar, in particular 2 Marshall Miller games, The Warren and We Are Now Clones, or We Are But Clone. What's it called? Clone something? Clone World. Is it Clone World? Shit, I can't remember. They both have a feature where, in particular in Clone World just has like a move, right? It's just like a real stripped down move, kind of like World of Dungeons. And the whole thrust of the game is to, as your clones learn how to do new things, you just make custom moves for them on the fly, right? The Warren has a similar thing. It's less emphasized in the Warren, but the rabbits can learn how to do brand new things,
Yeah. One
of the criticisms I've heard of the clone game is almost what you've described there, which is a lot of times the players don't know where to go with it, right? like they, okay, we have to make this move. Well, what does that mean? But the stakes are pretty low in that game, though. I mean, it's a pretty short, small game.
There's another kind of mechanic. Oh, go ahead, Rich.
It's Nano World.
Nano World, thank you. Yeah, I knew I was getting it wrong. Yeah, Nano World.
I agreed with you, so we both got it wrong. I looked it up.
And I wrote a haiku for that thing, so to get a copy of it, I should remember.
The other mechanical thing that occurred to me afterwards is I've built the 4 moves essentially for interact, fight, discover, and act. Those are the 4 in very generic ways. If someone makes up a custom move, if it just echoes that, why don't they just go to the base move? And that's a problem. And what I should have established is if you build a custom move, it's better than the base move. And that I think maybe if I'd made that explicit that it does benefit, or, you can set something that if you roll 10 or better, you get a bonus, or 12 better. This is sort of the first time I've played around with doing a hack like that.
Yeah. Well, keep us up to date on it. I think it's a really interesting project.
I will mention the other thing that I definitely used keys, which Rich had suggested to me, and I've kind of enjoyed that as an option.
Rich will try to get some Lady Blackbird shit whenever he can in there.
Oh, so. Yeah.
I'm going to take a quick break and let you guys know that there is a game design contest on RPG Geek called Hack the Bird, or Bird Hack, or what crap. Oh man, I had a big
Hack the Black.
Hack the Black. Thank you. So it's a Lady Blackbird hacking contest that just started.
It's supremely hackable, so it makes sense. Yeah, I get it.
It totally is.
But it runs through the beginning of October, so you've got a long time to make your game for that one.
Awesome. Let's go to Give Me Life. Hey, it's Giving Me Life. Rich, what's Giving Me Life?
K-pop is giving me life.
I'm sorry.
So K-pop is Korean pop. You may have heard Gangnam Style. That's kind of the big wild success, but it's a thing. It's been around for a number of years. There are bands that I found out about recently that have gotten together, made super hits, gone solo, broken up. Like, it's a whole thing. The first time I actually heard K-pop, other than Gangnam Style, and saw that was really interesting, was there's a Korean ice cream parlor here. And we went there and they just play K-pop all the time. And K-pop has got these fantastic music videos like from the MTV days, very glitzy, lots of dance moves. It's very Backstreet Boys, very NSYNC, very Spice Girls. It's that whole glam, bright colors, awesome everything. It's super fun, and I really like it. It's a fun thing to get. Like, this got a great beat, and they sing in Korean, and then all of a sudden the chorus comes and it's in English, and then they go back to Korean. The funniest thing to me about K-pop is that I normally listen to it at work through Google Music, because that's not blocked through the work firewall. But I love Pandora for music discovery, right? And Pandora will take the DNA of the music and give you other suggestions.
Right, yeah.
So I seeded in and built a K-pop station for Pandora. It keeps giving me Beyonce. Like, over and over. Oh, this sounds a lot like Beyonce. You obviously want Beyonce.
That's because our last name starts with a K. Pandora.
Wait, what?
It does, Knowles.
Knowles. There we go. K-pop. I didn't hear the last name part. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
More recently, like the last few years, the K-pop groups, even though the music labels are in Korea, they are releasing songs that are in Korean and Mandarin and Japanese. It's the same group. They're just re-recording the same songs in different languages to broaden the appeal. It's a huge thing.
I remember on one of the really ancient Giving Me Lives, Dan talked about K-pop. He talked about waking up at 3 a.m. and being in a half awake daze and stumbling onto some K-pop on TV. And yeah, he said all the same stuff you did. He really liked it. Like, there was he talked about like they would show like different video versions of the same song with like different stories being told and random snatches of English that make no sense, and like yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, it's funny that I come in and I'm like super late to the game, like a lot of stuff, and these groups have already this group's already broken up like 2 years ago, and there are some horror stories around K-pop if you want to Google some of the manufacturing of the groups and 14-hour days and 13-year-long contracts with teenage children. It's pretty scary, but I like the music.
Awesome. Lowell, what's giving you life?
I've always hated wrestling. I've always hated it. Growing up, it was no interest to me when all of the wrestling was on the MTV and Hulk Hogan was in its prime and stuff. And later on, just had no interest or appeal to me whatsoever. And yet, when Rich mentioned Worldwide Wrestling to me last year when we were at Origins, that I should pick it up, I was like, okay, I'll pick it up. But I didn't read it until recently. And I was like, oh, this is kind of neat. I wonder what this wrestling thing is about. And one of my friends who does wrestling, said, you should watch Lucha Underground. And Lucha Underground is luchador wrestling on the El Rey network. And it is awesome. I love it. I watch it and I'm loving the story, and I watch every match, and I'm only halfway through the first season, but I am in. I've bought in heavy. I just love it.
Nice.
And I don't know what it is as opposed to other wrestling things that I've seen. It just grabs me.
Is it in Spanish?
No, but there's a lot of Spanish commentary off to the side sometimes.
Cool.
Lowell, come on, man. I mean, we can call it a tease for your blog, but you got to tell him the thing you made. You know what I'm talking about.
Well, eventually we're going to do a Worldwide Wrestling / Monster of the Week campaign.
Oh.
Where the wrestlers go to a town, they do their wrestling match, but then we actually find out that, in fact, they're there to fight a supernatural evil. Nice, they go and do that the next session, and then we go back to another wrestling thing, and it's like Supernatural with wrestling.
Nice. Well, I mean, that's basically American wrestling, right? I mean,
yep.
Especially in the 90s, right? That whole
Well, that's super luchadors, too, man.
Oh, really?
Absolutely luchadors.
Well, and there's a Luchador Monster of the Week playbook, too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there is.
Yeah. That was actually the first one I played, was that when I played Monster of the Week.
That's actually based off some cartoon, I think. That Luchador Monster of the Week character. There's like a cartoon of like a luchador that fights monsters or something. I didn't know that.
Well, that was actually Blue Devil and El Santo.
Yeah.
Is the old classic movies and stuff from the 40s and 50s and even up through the 60s and 70s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
maybe that's what I'm talking about. I don't know. Yeah.
One of the characters from The Strain the TV show, the vampire TV show, that's pretty great. 2 seasons in, is a retired luchador who had movies about him where he fought monsters. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
There's that great Angel episode with the luchadors. They're old retired luchadors. That is really awesome. Yeah, I love it. I love the masks. I love it all.
That sounds awesome. That sounds really fun. Yeah, that sounds badass.
Very cool.
My thing is not really giving me life. It's kind of a combination giving me life, community feedback, I guess. I just wanted to brag on Gauntlet Hangouts a little bit because really, truly, we all of us, and I say we, I mean like the whole community, especially the community who's participated in Gauntlet Hangouts, has a lot to be proud of. Gauntlet Hangouts, our online gaming organization thing, is not even a year old yet. It's just barely over 10 months old right now. And as of when I did the math, we've scheduled 224 events through Gauntlet Hangouts in that 10 months. Now, some of those are the Super Friends chit chat hangouts, but the vast majority of them are games. And of those 224, only 7 either didn't make or were canceled. So that means 217 made and got played.
That's amazing.
It's so awesome.
There are conventions that would kill for that.
I'm blown away by it. Like I was doing the numbers and I was like, I had to check the math. I was like, is that right? Like that averages out to about 4 games a week, but it's true. Like it is. That's what we do. And so I'm just so super proud. Gauntlet Hangouts is still ongoing. There are 43 events on the calendar right now. People join us for Gauntlet Hangouts. So,
and hey, if you want to run a game,
yes, we'd love for you to run one. That would be great because Rich and I can't do all of it. It would be nice if we had some help. We have a few people who run games, but yeah, if you want to run games with Gauntlet Hangouts, I will do more than just like say, yes, please put your game up there. I will show you the best way to put it up on the meetup. I will show you the best way to promote it to the community, and I'll give you some tips on how to run it, because I think some people feel a little intimidated running games online. If you are interested in running some games online, listeners, through Gauntlet Hangouts, just hit me up. I'm happy to give you all the tools you need to make it successful. Awesome. That's our show. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you should definitely go to our website, gauntlet-rpg.com. At that website, you will find links to Gauntlet Hangouts, as well as our other physical meetups. There are several now, and our G Plus community, which you should definitely join. We're also on Twitter at GauntletRPG. Hey, Lowell, thanks so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Rich, thanks so much as always.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, listeners. Bye-bye. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I totally just phased out there for a second. You can edit that.
Oh, the power of editing. I'll make you sound smart, Jason. I'll smartnate you.
By doing that, I can leave secret messages in the audio.
And that's been really fascinating to me to watch how we sit in one role. You know the actor. Oh, what is it? The 3 stance model. There's the actor stance, the director stance. You guys, have you heard this?
I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea.
Oh, come on.
Is it the thing that Mark Diaz-Tribune was talking about in that essay a little while ago?
Possibly. Well, let me roll it back.